Chapter 12, Public Opinion. Good afternoon, everyone. Today we turn to one of the most fascinating topics in political science, public opinion. In a democracy, legitimacy depends on the idea that government reflects the will of the people. But what exactly is public opinion? How is it formed, measured, and used? And perhaps most importantly, how much influence does it really have on government policy? Defining public opinion. At its core, public opinion refers to the collection of attitudes, beliefs, and values that people hold about politics and government. It's not just what individuals think in isolation, but the collective mood of the nation on issues ranging from healthcare and taxes to war and civil rights. Measuring public opinion. To study public opinion, political scientists rely heavily on polling. Scientific surveys use random sampling to ensure representativeness. Organizations like Gallup and Pew Research have long been leaders in this field, but polls can be tricky. Sampling error means results always carry a margin of uncertainty. Question wording and order can bias responses. Timing matters, opinions can shift dramatically in response to events. Non-response bias may distort results if certain groups are less likely to participate. Exit polls, for example, help us understand election outcomes, but they have sometimes been wrong, reminding us that measuring opinion is as much an art as it is a science. When political scientists want to understand what people think, they almost always turn to polling. Polls are the backbone of public opinion research, offering a snapshot of attitudes across the country. The best polls rely on scientific methods, especially random sampling, to ensure that the voices included are representative of the larger population. This is why organizations such as Gallup and the Pew Research Center have earned long-standing reputations as trusted leaders in the field. They have refined these methods for decades, helping us track changes in public mood on everything from presidential approval ratings to views on social issues. But as precise as polls may seem, they are far from perfect. Every poll carries a margin of error known as sampling error, which reminds us that results can only approximate reality. Beyond that, even the way questions are worded can tilt answers in one direction or another. A slight change in phrasing, say government assistance versus welfare, may dramatically alter responses. The order of questions matters too. What comes first can prime the way people interpret what comes later. Timing adds another complication. Public opinion is not fixed, it ebbs and flows with events. A poll conducted the day before a major crisis may look very different from one taken the day after. Likewise, non-response bias poses a hidden challenge. If certain groups are less likely to answer surveys, young people, busy professionals, or marginalized communities, the sample may not fully reflect the population. That gap can skew results in subtle but significant ways. Exit polls illustrate both the promise and the peril of public opinion measurement. Conducted on election day, they provide immediate insights into who voted and why, yet history has shown they are not foolproof. At times, they have projected winners incorrectly, sowing confusion before final results are tallied. Such missteps remind us of an important truth. Measuring public opinion is not a mechanical process. It is part science, built on statistical methods, and part art, requiring judgment, nuance, and humility. In the end, polling remains one of the most valuable tools we have to peer into the public mind. But we must approach the results with both appreciation and caution, recognizing that behind every percentage point lies a complex blend of voices, biases, and shifting circumstances. Political socialization. Where do people's opinions come from? They are shaped through political socialization, the lifelong process of acquiring political beliefs. Key influences include family, often the strongest influence, shaping early values. Education, which fosters civic knowledge and democratic values. Peers and community, especially during adolescence and adulthood. Religion and culture, which provide moral frameworks. Media, increasingly powerful in framing issues. Major historical events like the Great Depression, 9/11, or COVID-19, which leave lasting generational imprints. Where do our political opinions come from? None of us are born with ready-made views about government, justice, or society. Instead, our beliefs are shaped through political socialization, a lifelong process of acquiring political attitudes and values. This process starts early in life and continues to evolve as we encounter new people, experiences, and events. Political socialization helps explain why we think the way we do about politics and why entire generations can develop shared outlooks. The family is often the most powerful influence, particularly in childhood. Parents don't just pass down religious or cultural traditions, they also model political attitudes, sometimes directly by discussing politics at the dinner table, and other times indirectly through everyday habits and assumptions. For example, a child raised in a household where voting is treated as a civic duty is more likely to grow up seeing political participation as important. As we grow, education becomes a major agent of socialization. Schools teach not only history and civics, but also the democratic values of equality, fairness, and participation. Through classrooms, students learn about their rights and responsibilities as citizens, and through activities such as student government, they practice decision-making and leadership. Peers and community play a growing role during adolescence and adulthood. Friend groups, workplaces, and local communities all help shape how we see issues. For instance, a person whose friends are politically active may feel more compelled to participate in marches, campaigns, or voting. Religion and culture also contribute significantly, offering moral frameworks that can influence views on issues such as family, gender, and social justice. A religious community might encourage collective responsibility and charity, while cultural traditions can shape ideas of authority, duty, and freedom. In the modern era, media has become an especially powerful force. Television, newspapers, and now social media platforms frame issues, highlight certain stories, and even filter the information we see. Algorithms can create echo chambers where individuals are repeatedly exposed to the same perspectives, reinforcing existing beliefs and sometimes deepening polarization. Finally, major historical events leave deep marks on entire generations. The Great Depression created a generation that valued government safety nets. 9/11 reshaped attitudes toward security and foreign policy, and COVID-19 has altered views on public health, government authority, and individual freedoms. Such events become touchstones that shape not only individual opinions, but also the broader political culture. In short, political socialization is a continuous process, weaving together family lessons, formal education, peer influences, cultural and religious traditions, media exposure, and world events. Together, these forces create the foundation of our political identities and explain why societies are both diverse in opinion and yet often marked by generational patterns. Factors influencing public opinion. Beyond socialization, demographic and identity factors play a major role. Age, race, gender, income, religion, and geography all correlate with political attitudes. For example, younger generations tend to be more progressive on social issues, while older generations lean more conservative. Urban and rural divides also strongly shape opinions. Public opinion and participation. Public opinion doesn't just live in surveys. It shapes political behavior. It influences whether people vote, protest, or engage in civic activities. Higher trust in government is linked to greater participation, while cynicism and polarization can suppress involvement. The role of media. Media plays a crucial role in shaping opinion. Through agenda setting, the media tells us what issues to think about. Through framing, it shapes how we interpret those issues. And through priming, it influences which issues we use to evaluate leaders. In the age of social media, echo chambers and misinformation add new complications, as citizens may receive vastly different versions of reality depending on their media choices. The media plays a central role in shaping how citizens understand politics and the world around them. It is often referred to as the fourth estate because of its power to influence not just what people know, but how they think about issues. Media doesn't simply report events, it helps define which events and perspectives matter most. One of the most important functions of media is agenda setting. By choosing which stories to highlight and which to ignore, the media effectively tells the public what issues deserve attention. For instance, if climate change, healthcare, or immigration dominates the headlines for weeks, citizens are more likely to see these as the most urgent problems facing the country, regardless of whether they are the most statistically pressing issues. But the influence goes deeper than just drawing attention. Through framing, media outlets shape the way we interpret those issues. Consider economic policy. One headline might describe a new tax plan as relief for hardworking families, while another calls it a burden on small businesses. Both stories could be factually accurate, but the framing pushes the audience toward very different interpretations. Subtle choices in wording, visuals, and even the voices interviewed can tilt perceptions dramatically. Media also engages in priming, the process by which coverage affects the standards people use to evaluate political leaders. For example, if the news heavily emphasizes foreign policy crises, citizens may judge a president primarily on their handling of international affairs. If, instead, the media is focused on inflation or unemployment, economic performance becomes the yardstick by which leaders are measured. In the digital era, these processes have become even more complex. The rise of social media has transformed the flow of information from a one-way broadcast into an interactive, fragmented ecosystem. On the one hand, this allows more voices to be heard, empowering grassroots movements and marginalized communities. On the other hand, it creates echo chambers where individuals surround themselves with like-minded opinions, rarely encountering alternative perspectives. Compounding this challenge is the spread of misinformation and disinformation. False or misleading stories can circulate rapidly online, often outpacing fact-checking efforts. In some cases, misinformation is accidental, but disinformation, deliberate attempts to deceive, can be used strategically to manipulate public opinion or sow division. Ultimately, the role of media in shaping opinion is both powerful and double-edged. It informs, connects, and mobilizes citizens, but it can also distort, polarize, and mislead. For modern democracies, the challenge lies in fostering media literacy, equipping citizens to critically evaluate the sources and messages they consume, so that the media strengthens democratic debate rather than undermining it. Elites and opinion leadership. While we often think of opinion as bottom-up, it's also shaped top-down by political elites. Presidents, party leaders, and activists use speeches, policies, and media appearances to shape public understanding. Ordinary citizens, in turn, respond to these cues. Public opinion is therefore a dialogue, sometimes reactive, sometimes guided. When we talk about public opinion, it is easy to imagine it as a bottom-up process, where millions of individuals form their own views and collectively shape the national mood. While this is partly true, it is equally important to recognize that opinion also flows from the top down, shaped by those we call political elites. These include presidents, party leaders, elected officials, interest group organizers, and prominent activists. Through their words and actions, elites set the tone for much of the political conversation. Consider the role of the presidency. A speech from the Oval Office or a policy announcement can frame an issue in a way that reverberates across the nation. When Franklin Roosevelt delivered his fireside chats, he didn't just inform the public, he reassured them, shaping how ordinary Americans viewed the Depression and the New Deal. In more recent decades, Ronald Reagan's rhetoric about the evil empire defined how many Americans thought about the Cold War, while Barack Obama's speeches on healthcare reform helped frame the national debate on the Affordable Care Act. But it isn't just presidents. Party leaders and activists also play key roles in opinion leadership. Party platforms highlight which issues matter most to each side, signaling to citizens what their partisan identity should mean in practice. Activists, from civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. to modern climate advocates like Greta Thunberg, demonstrate how grassroots voices can move from the margins into the mainstream, often reshaping the public agenda in the process. Citizens, in turn, are not passive recipients. They respond to these elite cues in a variety of ways, sometimes embracing them, sometimes resisting them. For instance, when political leaders take strong stances, they often polarize public opinion, drawing supporters closer while pushing opponents further away. This is why debates over issues such as immigration, abortion, or climate change often become sharply divided along partisan lines. Elites frame the issue, and ordinary people align their views accordingly. This dynamic illustrates that public opinion is not a one-way street. It is best understood as a dialogue between leaders and the public. At times, elites guide the conversation, introducing new issues or shaping interpretations of old ones. At other times, public outcry forces leaders to respond. Think of how widespread protests against the Vietnam War shifted the policy discussions in Washington. In short, elites and opinion leaders function as both navigators and amplifiers in the democratic process. They set the agenda, provide interpretive cues, and influence the language through which we debate politics. Yet they also must listen and adjust, because legitimacy in a democracy ultimately depends on public consent. Public opinion, then, is neither purely grassroots nor purely elite-driven, but rather a constant negotiation between the two. Public opinion and policy. Does public opinion shape government policy? The answer is yes, but imperfectly. When opinion is strong and unified, leaders often respond, but when it is divided or uninformed, elites have more leeway to pursue their own agendas. Sometimes policy lags behind opinion, as seen with same-sex marriage and marijuana legalization. Other times, leaders act first, shaping opinion after the fact. Contemporary challenges. Public opinion faces several challenges today. Polarization, with citizens divided into ideological camps. Declining trust in institutions, including Congress and the media. Information overload, making it difficult to distinguish fact from misinformation. Fragmentation, with Americans inhabiting different cultural and political realities. In today's political climate, understanding public opinion requires grappling with a series of contemporary challenges that complicate how opinions are formed, expressed, and interpreted. These challenges reflect deeper changes in society, technology, and political culture, and they make the study of public opinion both more urgent and more difficult than in the past. The first major challenge is polarization. Americans are increasingly divided into ideological camps, with Democrats and Republicans not only disagreeing on policy, but often holding fundamentally different worldviews. This division is visible in voting patterns, media consumption, and even in personal relationships. Families split along partisan lines, and friendships strained over political disagreements are now commonplace. Polarization creates an environment where compromise becomes rare and where politics is seen less as debate and more as a battle between us and them. A second challenge is the declining trust in institutions. Surveys consistently show that confidence in Congress, the presidency, the Supreme Court, and especially the media has eroded over the last several decades, where earlier generations might have trusted government to do the right thing most of the time. Today's citizens are far more skeptical. This skepticism can fuel apathy, discourage civic participation, and make it harder for leaders to mobilize support for policies, even in times of crisis. Closely tied to these trends is the problem of information overload. In the digital era, citizens are bombarded with news, opinions, and commentary from countless sources. While access to information has never been greater, the sheer volume makes it difficult to separate fact from misinformation. Social media accelerates the spread of unverified claims, while algorithms often prioritize sensational or polarizing content over balanced reporting. As a result, citizens may feel overwhelmed, distrustful, or inclined to retreat into sources that simply confirm what they already believe. Finally, there is the issue of fragmentation. Americans no longer share a single national conversation. Instead, they inhabit distinct cultural and political realities shaped by geography, identity, and especially media choices. One person's trusted news outlet may be another person's fake news. This fragmentation means that two citizens living in the same city may consume entirely different versions of reality, making it harder to build consensus on basic facts, let alone on policy solutions. Taken together, these challenges highlight the complexity of studying and responding to public opinion today. Polarization deepens divides, declining trust undermines authority, information overload clouds judgment, and fragmentation splinters society into parallel worlds. For a democracy that depends on informed citizens and collective decision-making, these trends present serious obstacles. Yet they also underscore why understanding public opinion, its sources, its shifts, and its limits, remains one of the most vital tasks for political scientists and engaged citizens alike. Conclusion: public opinion is the heartbeat of democracy, but it is not simple, stable, or always rational. It is formed by social influences, measured through imperfect tools, and filtered by elites and media. Still, it remains one of the most powerful forces in American politics, shaping elections, policies, and the legitimacy of government itself. As we move forward, ask yourself, how much should government follow public opinion? And how much should leaders act independently, even against popular will? That tension defines the relationship between citizens and their government. Next time, in Chapter 13, we'll examine the judicial branch, where courts interpret laws and often serve as guardians of both civil liberties and civil rights.